Spoiler alert, I can't recommend this dock at all. If you look in the top left corner of this video, you'll notice a paid promotion label. That's because Ivanky sent this item over for review. I do get to keep it. And while I do appreciate them sending it, I have a few problems with it, specifically what it should be, what it's trying to be, and what it isn't. And I would hope that Ivanky watches this video and makes some major steps around this product and release a version that actually makes some sense. If they don't want to work with me again, I'm totally fine with that, but I can't in good conscience recommend this. Not to call out other YouTubers because that went so well for me last time, but some other reviews I've seen on this device praises its functionality, and as a tech guy, I don't think those videos have your best interests in mind. I say this because this dock misses in some very important areas. Let's talk about it. On the front of the box, you can see that it states it's a triple monitor solution for MacBook. I already have an issue with this, so if I had a Mac Mini, I couldn't use this. And the first thing it says on the bottom is designed for macOS, but in the manual, you can clearly see Windows 8, 10, or later compatibility. So that's a little confusing for those who don't know better, and we're gonna come back to that later. It has a good weight and it feels well built, but don't be fooled into thinking it's super premium. I used it once for this review and you can see some obvious scuff marks on the top casing. The product pages make this dock look more premium feeling than it is in person. To be clear, it's not bad, but it's a letdown once you have the product in your hand compared to how their marketing material makes it look. On the front of this dock, you get a PD USB-C port, a USB-C 10 gigabit port, two USB-A 10 gigabit ports, a TF and SD card slot, a headphone jack, and a power button. On the rear, a DC 20 volt input to go with this huge, and I mean huge power adapter, a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port, two more 10 gigabit USB-A ports, and three HDMI 2.0 ports. Ports 2 and 3 are marked as driver-based, and well, that's where things fall apart a little bit. Oh, on the sides, they got the Kensington lock and the USB-C upstream port for connecting to the computer that you're using. I definitely appreciate that the port for the upstream is on the side, but that upstream port is going to be a topic of conversation shortly. So about the HDMI ports, this dock is marketed as a triple display dock, but it uses DisplayLink to achieve this. And similar to the Elgato prompter I reviewed recently, DisplayLink is a software-based display output. And it's good in a pinch, but something about Ivanky's implementation is weird. First off, DisplayLink is not going to be a solution you want to use if you're doing high frame rate gaming. And with this dock specifically, when I used it, my macros on my Stream Deck broke. This was extremely repeatable too. In Final Cut for my contracted work, I created some macros to do some file naming for me when I export. Watch how it operates when I either go straight via HDMI to the monitors from the computer itself or use a Thunderbolt dock. The macro triggers correctly. When I use this dock, it gets stuck. I've rebooted, double checked, I was updated with all the necessary DisplayLink drivers, and this kept happening. So I thought maybe it was DisplayLink causing it, except if I tried this on the Elgato prompter plugged in, it worked fine. That also is a DisplayLink device, so it's telling me that Ivanky's implementation of DisplayLink is the culprit. Something else to note here is the temperature. It gets hot. Like so hot, I don't feel comfortable having it on my desk, which has a coating of epoxy on it. I don't have a temperature gun, but plugging in a SATA to USB-C converter and an SD card reader while having only one monitor connected was hot enough for me to stop using it after about 15 minutes. I do understand why it's getting so hot though. It's because of the bandwidth limitation. Which leads me to the main issues I have with this product. It's not Thunderbolt. I think it's trying to emulate Thunderbolt's specs and target Apple's audience. Ivanky even branded themselves with a lowercase I at the beginning of their name, but I have some issues with this. Remember the ports on the side, the Kensington lock, and specifically the upstream port? It's only USB-C. The upstream port can only do 10 gigabit per second, and that 10 gigabits is shared throughout the entire dock, which means if you have displays connected to it and you're transferring data off it, good luck getting full speed if you're doing multiple transfers while downloading something using that 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port. Again, you're going to hit the limit. And with that bandwidth bottleneck, it leads to the constant heat issues. Oh, and I didn't even bother testing the card slots because with the heat it was putting out, I didn't want to risk damaging the cards. So you might be saying to yourself, it's not a Thunderbolt dock, it's a USB-C dock. And you're right, it's not. But my question is, why is it priced like a Thunderbolt dock? Look at this somewhat confusing pricing. Ivanky's own website at the time of filming this lists it at $443 US. There's a limited time offer to get $100 off, and I believe also a 5% coupon, which would bring it down to around $325 US. To add to the confusion, look at their Amazon listing for the same dock. It's $199 there, and that's only for Prime members. So for just over $50 above their site pricing, you can get a Thunderbolt 4 dock from Ivanky, or even CalDigit's TS4 Thunderbolt 4 dock, or if you're on a budget and don't mind going back a few generations, CalDigit's TS3 Plus is listed at $209 US. Sure, it's older, but it could do 40 gigabits shared across its ports versus 10, and for substantially less money. In fact, if you're missing 2.5 gigabit, you can just grab a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet adapter for like around $20 with the CalDigit and not have to deal with DisplayLink. The materials on the Ivanky dock aren't conducive to great heat dissipation, and you'd think for an expensive dock it would have better build materials to necessitate this, given how hot it gets. The triple display marketing is also kind of a joke. Not only did I have those macro issues I mentioned earlier, but for some reason, my calibrated monitor profiles in macOS Sequoia were unable to be applied, so that was super annoying. And look, that could be a DisplayLink limitation, but either way, it works with my Thunderbolt 4 dock. So I'm not sure who this is for exactly. The profit margins on this must be high, and it only uses USB-C technology. Thunderbolt costs more inherently due to the licensing, and this seemingly has a Thunderbolt tax on it, but again, it's not Thunderbolt. It's far from Thunderbolt. Look at this chungus huge power supply. Okay, this is the kind of power supply you get with a Thunderbolt dock, but again, this isn't Thunderbolt. It could be a good device for people who have no intention of using any of the display out ports, but then that defeats the entire purpose of the main marketing of it being a triple display dock, not to mention the outrageous price point. Ivanky, I'm sorry, but this isn't it. It's kind of a ripoff, and you should go back to the drawing board on this. My subjective opinion is that a USB-C dock, no matter how many ports it has, shouldn't cost more than, say, $150. And even then, that price point is way too high. The literature and the pricing for like people who aren't super techie is super confusing. As somebody who is techie, it's super confusing. I love messing with this stuff. And even I'm sitting here scratching my head at this because again, it's designed for macOS, but it has Windows support. I get the all-white packaging. You're trying to get into that conversation, okay? Like the conversation with other third parties who get featured in spaces that sell Apple products, like say Logitech or Belkin. But this is just straight up weird and missing the mark by a lot. If your Mac even has one Thunderbolt port on it, just buy a Thunderbolt dock if you're in the market. If not, there's plenty of USB-C options that make way more sense than this thing, especially at its price point. If you got value from this or found yourself saving money by avoiding this dock entirely, after watching it, maybe consider hitting that like and subscribe button. I seriously hate asking for that, but that's YouTube. By the way, YouTube is recommending this video for you to watch next. My name is Sean. This has been Tech Mixer, and I'm out. Peace.